It's almost that time. The Formula One season is upon us, kicking off a new year with all the associated high hopes that accompany a fresh start. My name is Elizabeth Blackstock, US editor over at planetf1.com, and I'm taking over from Sean today so that we can have a little trip down memory lane on the F1 word. Since we're heading over to Albert Park for round one, I thought it might be fun to take a look at the controversial 2009 Australian Grand Prix and Lewis Hamilton's disqualification. Drama had been circling Formula One well before the 2009 season even got underway, with McLaren and Renault both threatening to boycott the season opener. Neither team had been paid by F1 heading into the year, something that would only happen if they had signed the new Concord Agreement. And, well, they hadn't. The two teams finally decided that, yes, it would be in their best interest to turn up. But at the track, we started our next round of drama, with several teams questioning the legality of new diffusers that Braun, Toyota, and Williams were boasting. While the protest was ultimately thrown out at the time, a visit to the FIA International Court of Appeals determined that, yes, in fact, the diffusers were legal. Getting into the Grand Prix itself, the bronze of Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello paced the field. When the event actually kicked off, Button retained his lead into the first corner and was one of just a few cars to avoid some of that classic first lap chaos that kicked off further down the field. See, Barrichello had stalled at the start and then pushed hard to regain the positions he'd lost, which meant that his left front tire collided with the side pod of Red Bull's Mark Webber, which pushed Webber into the McLaren of Heikki Kovalainen. Also caught up in the fracas were Adrian Sutil and Nick Heidfeld. That first lap incident set the tone for a race that was dominated by Button up at the front, but that tended to descend into chaos further behind. A safety car popped up on lap 18 when Kazuki Nakajima crashed into the wall between turns 4 and 5, followed by another on lap 56, just 2 laps before the end of the race, when Sebastian Vettel collided with Robert Kubica. After that collision, Vettel attempted to continue on with a broken wheel, but it wasn't to be. His car ended up coming to a stop on the track between turns 10 and 11, which forced a safety car to guide the field to a very quiet finish to the race. It was a Braun 1-2, with Button taking his first victory en route to a decisive world championship. In third was the Toyota of Jarno Trulli, but already there were some concerns. It seemed like Trulli had maybe passed Lewis Hamilton under safety car conditions, something that's actively forbidden in Formula One. It didn't take long before Trulli was slapped with a 25-second penalty, dropping him down the order from 3rd to 12th. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton, who had started a lowly 18th on the grid, was crowned with a podium finish in 3rd place. But something was amiss. Article 40.14 of the 2009 Formula One sporting regulations stated, if the race ends whilst a safety car is deployed, it will enter the pit lane at the end of the last lap, and the cars will take the checkered flag as normal without overtaking. After celebrating on the podium and conducting his post-race interviews, Jarno Trulli was placed under investigation by the FIA. See, it appeared that as the cars were filtering home under the safety car, Trulli had passed Lewis Hamilton. Trulli even went so far as to admit it, stating, when the safety car came out toward the end of the race, Lewis Hamilton passed me, but soon after he suddenly slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. I thought he had a problem, so I overtook him as there was nothing else I could do. Hamilton echoed Trulli's sentiment, saying that his McLaren team had actually asked him to let Trulli by. Speaking to Speed, Hamilton said, I was behind Trulli under the safety car, and clearly you're not allowed to overtake under the safety car. But he went off in the second to last corner. He went wide on the grass. I guess his tires were cold, and I was forced to go by. I slowed down as much as I could. I was told to let him back pass, but I don't know if that's the regulations, and if it isn't, then I should have really had 3rd. After hearing from both drivers, the FIA determined that Trulli should not have overtaken Hamilton, hence the 25-second penalty for the Toyota driver, followed by Hamilton's promotion to 3rd. But wait, this is a story about a Hamilton disqualification, so what actually happened? In the immediate aftermath of this penalty, Toyota appealed, but again, Formula One sporting regulations kicked in. Article 16.3 of the rulebook at the time said that teams were not able to appeal time penalties that took place in the final 5 laps, at least not at the track. Toyota then turned to Tim Schenken, who was serving as the clerk of the course, but ultimately, the team decided that it was better to take this all the way to the top, directly to the International Court of Appeal. On April 2nd, 2009, Trulli and Hamilton were asked to appear before the stewards to review the appeal, complete with some new evidence. There, a bombshell dropped. The FIA had sourced the radio conversations between Hamilton and McLaren, and an instruction from the team to Hamilton to slow down and let Trulli by was nowhere to be found. I'll give you one guess as to how happy the FIA were about that. The stewards, having learned about the radio exchanges and the media interview, felt strongly that they had been misled by the driver and his team manager, read the FIA's statement in the aftermath. The FIA also made it very clear it wasn't impressed by the fact that Hamilton had continued to double down on that misleading statement after the race, as well as by the fact that neither Hamilton nor McLaren ever bothered to correct the record, despite knowing that a competitor was going to be heavily punished. With all that settled, Trulli's third place was reinstated. Meanwhile, Hamilton was disqualified from the race, and McLaren was stripped of its constructors' points. When that ruling came down, McLaren fired sporting director Dave Ryan, while an additional FIA meeting handed McLaren a suspended 3-race ban, which basically meant if the team did this kind of thing anytime in the next 12 months, it would be banned for 3 races. Otherwise, it was able to continue as normal. McLaren team principal Martin Whitmarsh said, "We are disappointed by what has happened, but in the circumstances, we're not going to appeal." His whole statement is worth checking out, so I'm going to read it here for you. There is no implication that Lewis lied to the stewards. As I understand, there is a belief that the team was not explicit enough in the content of the radio communications to the stewards. What they believe is that the omission of the information about the radio communication between the team was withheld, and that is misleading. I believe it was a harsh decision. Lewis made a legitimate pass and then was repassed. At the time, the team asked race control several times about the repass, but they were too busy to answer that question, so we felt the decision in the immediate aftermath was fair. I think it's a regrettable day. It certainly wasn't a deliberate attempt to mislead. Remember, this is just 2 years after the whole Spygate scandal, where a former Ferrari employee was accused of providing trade secrets to McLaren. So there wasn't exactly a whole lot of trust between that team and the FIA at that point in time. Heading into the rest of the season, a 24-year-old Lewis Hamilton was left to defend himself against some pretty strong public backlash. I could not tell you how sorry I am for the embarrassment Hamilton told media during a press conference ahead of the Malaysian Grand Prix. I sincerely apologize to the race stewards for wasting their time and making them look silly. When I went into the meeting, I had no intention to mislead. I just wanted to tell my story and see what happened. I was misled, and that's just how it went. I want to say sorry to all my fans. I am not a liar or a dishonest person. I am a team player. If the team asks me to do something, I generally do it. But I felt awkward and uncomfortable. This is not an easy thing to do, to step back and realize I was in the wrong. But I was in the wrong. I was misled. At the close of 2009, Hamilton finished 5th in the World Drivers' Championship, taking 2 wins, one in Hungary and one in Singapore. McLaren also took 3rd in the battle for the Constructors' Championship. More modern F1 fans will definitely know that the 2009 event in Australia is not the only time Lewis Hamilton has been disqualified from a Grand Prix. The 7-time world champion faced a similar fate at the US Grand Prix, albeit for very different reasons. The 2023 event at Austin's Circuit of the Americas wasn't merely a Grand Prix weekend. It also featured a sprint race, and several teams had raised concerns about the bumpy nature of the track and the impact that could have on the cars. Those fears were realized after the checkered flag. In the midst of a challenging season, Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton crossed the line in 2nd place and celebrated a hard-fought podium, only to discover, several hours later, that FIA stewards had found excessive wear on his skid block. These blocks are mounted underneath the car and must remain a certain thickness in order to prove that teams are complying to ride height regulations. But at COTA, teams didn't seem quite fully prepared for the extra wear that might happen between the sprint race and the Grand Prix. As a result of that excessive wear, Hamilton was disqualified. The FIA determined that Charles Leclerc's Ferrari had suffered the same wear, and the Monegasque driver was also disqualified from 6th place. Are we going to see another disqualification this year in Australia? Honestly, it's probably not all that likely, but that's what makes 2009 such a wild year to revisit. If you're looking for more deep dives into F1 history, my name is Elizabeth Blackstock, and you can find me over on planetf1.com. But if you prefer the multimedia side of things, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the F1 Word. We'll see y'all next time.